Welcome to another episode of the Swish Show. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Tuckwood, and today I'm excited to bring you someone that, after reading just one of his books, had me hooked, but also made me realize I had absolutely no idea how to prospect professionally. He is the author of 12 books, I do believe now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, including Fanatical Prospecting, Objections, Sales EQ, and his new book, Virtual Selling, which I definitely want to dive into. He's among the world's most respected speakers, trainers, and thought leaders on sales, leadership, and customer experience. As a sales acceleration specialist, he helps sales organizations reach peak performance fast by optimizing their talent. This fact I found really interesting. You spend more than 250 days a year on the road, or previously on the road, delivering keynote speeches. I'm assuming it's in the Zoom room now. And delivering training programs to high-performing teams and leaders across the globe. As a business leader, Jeb has more than 25 years experience with Fortune 500 companies, mid-size SMBs, and startup enterprises. His flagship website, salesgravy.com, is the most visited sales-specific website on the planet. That's pretty cool. Mr. Jeb Blount, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Ryan. You know, and I used to spend a lot of time on the road. In fact, last year I spent 311 nights on the road, and now I deliver keynotes from my basement. So welcome to the brave new world.
I like that you call it the basement as well. 311 nights. That's some stint. This isn't really part of what I was going to talk about initially, but just hearing that, I want to ask, how do you maintain? I know you're at the back end of your day, and I know you've been in front of this camera now for 8, 9, maybe 10 hours or so. How do you maintain that level of energy and that enthusiasm throughout the day?
Well, I think, first of all, you got to love what you do. And I love what I do. I think you do too. I was, listening to in the pre-show talking about, your new brand Swish and what it means to you. And you can just see your passion coming through. And I think that's the most important thing is if you really believe what you're doing, like you believe in selling with honesty and with integrity, that makes sense to you. I believe what I'm doing. I believe that, that there's a reason for me to have a conversation with business owners and leaders and sales professionals. And I part of it is, I've done 300 plus days a year for the last 4 years, and it's seeing the globe. I mean, it's, I'm in Qatar one day, I'm in Malaysia the next day, I fly to, to Hong Kong, I hang out in Korea, then I'm in Europe, and then I'm back in the US. And so it's an opportunity to go spend time with people. But let me tell you this, because I think this is important. That's one way of doing business. And it's the way that I've been doing business because honestly, I've got a passport and I love to use it. I like to travel and I dig that. And there was a lot of money in it. But in the last 7 weeks, I've delivered 29 online keynotes, the same type of keynotes that I would deliver. I was standing on a stage. And I would have never done that in 7 weeks if you were on the road. I mean, because you're traveling in between, you're meeting people, you stay a couple of days, you do those things. So you spend a lot of time, but most of the time on the road that you're spending on the road is on the road, not actually standing on stage. So you may travel, for example, you may be on the road for, 3 days to do a 160-minute keynote. And then if you think about those 29 keynotes, even today, like the day we were just doing a count, we touched 3,000 people today. And we did it on a video camera. So the energy piece has really gotten a little bit different. I mean, it was really easy. You get off an airplane, you're in a new place, you walk into a new crowd, you get on stage, like you feel awesome doing that. The hard thing, and I think this is important for everybody, is you gotta have the same level of energy, if not even more, when you're looking at a video camera, because you got to be able to transfer that to people. And that's part of what selling is it's transferring emotions to other people and your passion. So I think it's super important that, when you're selling, no matter how you're selling, you do that. And I've seen a lot of salespeople who lost that ability to go on the road and talk to people, who now they're all depressed and they're down because I can't do this. I'm like, you got to get over that. Like selling's still selling. You're in Australia, I'm in the United States. I can see you on screen, and you're awesome looking, by the way. And I love your studio. So,
like
so we can still build a relationship. It might take a little bit longer. But if I was to come get on your show, I'd have to get on an airplane here and get to Australia. That's at least 24 hours of travel to get there. Then you're worn out. So I got to sleep a day before I can meet with you. Then we meet, we get to know each other, have lunch, we be more connected, and then fly back. There's no efficiency in that.
Yeah, and I take that point. It's a really valid point because in the last 2 or 3 months, I've been able to get the likes of Bradley, Cherie Leviton, Grant Cardone's been on this podcast as well, and that wouldn't have been possible realistically, especially with COVID. So in even commercially viable for me to fly and do a podcast interview is not realistic as well, half the time. So yeah, I take it on board. With your background, I mean, I've been following you now for a few years. I stumbled across fanatical prospecting whilst Googling how to find leads or something like that. So your AdWords are on point. And then I went down that rabbit hole of just watching YouTube after YouTube video of yourself. And I was like, okay, this guy's just talking to me. But for people that haven't heard of you before, do you mind just giving us your elevator pitch on your background, how you got into sales in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sales junkie from at the core. Like, I'm almost a sales nerd. So I started in sales in high school. I was on the high school yearbook, or the high school yearbook team, and we had to go out and sell ads for our high school yearbook. And I went out and started meeting people, and they started giving me money. And I call it sales crack. Like, you go meet somebody and you go, hey, would you like to buy an ad in the yearbook? And of course, it's the high school yearbook, so really people don't tell you no. There's not a lot of rejection, and they would write you checks. I was like, I love this. So I ended up outselling everybody in high school on the yearbook, and then I parlayed that into going to college. I got a job right out of college in sales. And for me, it was, I started working for a really big company, and I was able to outsell everybody. So I'm the #1 sales rep in the company. I'm 24 years old. I've sold more money than, more business than anybody in the history of the company. I do it again the second year. I make more money than the CEO because of the commissions. And what I figured out in high school, and I figured out early in my career, is that if you can make it rain, you get rewarded. And I was able to then climb the corporate ladder. I ended up as vice president of sales for a Fortune 200 company. And then eventually started my own company 13 years ago, Sales Gravy, which is my training company and consulting company. And we've been growing ever since. And every day I wake up and I'm on sales calls. I'm prospecting. I'm working with my team. I'm coaching my sales team. I'm in the trenches with them. I'm working with salespeople. And along the way, I've written 12 books. And it's been a really fun ride. But I fell in love with sales really, really early on, and figured out that was something that I was competent at doing. And like you, I believe in integrity and honesty and doing it the right way. And my job is to help people. And so to me, my life's passion is advancing sales as a profession, so that people who are in sales understand and believe and know that what they do is valuable. And the companies that employ them understand that the salespeople that are working for them are their elite athletes, and they need to treat them like elite athletes.
Yeah, I love that analogy as well. So I want this to be a very sales-focused conversation. Obviously, there's a nice overlap here. But for people that hear you say you fell in love with sales, right? That wasn't my journey. And just to put this into perspective for you, I was a mechanical maintenance engineer for 8 years in the UK, moved over here, and I fell into outbound cold calling, 300 dials a day, 90 seconds, find out if somebody's got $15,000 to $25,000 in their bank account. That was my role. I didn't fall in love with sales. I absolutely hated it, and I crashed. I was 21st out of 21 people for 3 months. I don't know whether it is an innate skill, and I'll get your take on it. Were you a natural salesperson, do you think? Did you have any sort of crisis points like that, or was it something that you just kind of just took in your stride straight from the off?
Oh, I had an awful job. So in college, so early in my college career, I needed some money, because I don't know what it's like in Australia, or in the UK, but in the United States, there's no such thing as free college. You got to go pay for it. So I needed some money. I'm trying to work my way through school. And when you're in class, you need some flexibility. So there was this article and this ad in the newspaper, and this dates me a little bit, so don't judge me, okay? But there's an ad in the newspaper, and it says unlimited income, flexible hours. I was like, okay, I circled that. That's for me. So I called them up, got the interview, went in, and it was a company that sold replacement windows and vinyl siding for houses, right? So you got a house, you put new windows in it, put siding in, and my job was, and this is literally, this is what they did. They got the phone book, and this is, by the way, for all the millennials and the Gen Zs, there was a thing called a phone book, right? And
yeah.
And they got the phone book and they put it in front of me and they said, start at A and keep going. But essentially my job was to call old people and get old people to give me money so that someone could put windows and siding. It was an awful job. I hated it. And so I left there and I got a job working for a fitness company. So my job was to, like, again, they brought me the phone book and literally put the phone book in front of me and start with A, call people up and sell gym memberships over the telephone. Well, both those jobs sucked. And I wasn't great at them and didn't really like them. And it was sort of the experience you had.
Yeah.
I did those things, but they didn't dissuade me from wanting to be in sales. It was just that, you know, it didn't take a fool to recognize that those were just not great roles. They weren't good jobs. They were, you know, they were like, you could make a lot of commission, but not a lot of salary. But as I moved through college, I got some other jobs where for example, I worked for our local newspaper and I sold there and I got pretty good at that. And I started working for companies that had good training. And when I got out of school, I went and worked for a company called Nutrisystem where I got really good training and had really good leaders. And I sold something that I believed in. And I learned how to interact with people and deal with people and walk people through the sales process. I learned about influence and persuasion. And then I got from there, I went work for a really big company where they spent, you know, months training me. And I worked for I sold a really good product. And so I grew into it. And I had really good leaders. I mean, other than those two like early companies that were just, I mean, really, they were just miserable, awful crap, like the boiler room crap. But other than that, you know, the truth is I got lucky because I got really good sales leaders and really good people who cared about me. And they cared enough to kick me in the rear end when I was doing things wrong and to teach me. And they cared enough to make sure that, you know, that I was pointed in the right direction, and they gave me coaching, and they were smart people that I learned from. And honestly, you know, I figured out that like when I was 24 years old, this is the, you know, mid 90s. I'm 24 years old and I'm making more than 300,000 US annually. I'm making more money than anybody that I know, all of my friends. I'm living a good lifestyle, and I don't really work that hard. You know, I go in the morning and I do my prospecting and I follow the system. I learned that if you can just do that and follow the system, that the world's your oyster. Plus, if you can sell a lot of stuff, eventually they give you more to do. So that's how you end up being in leadership. So for me, it was, I had awful experiences, but I love the game. Like I love the process. I love walking into someone's business who says, I'm not interested, or I don't have enough money. And I get to talk with them and I walk around their company and I learn about them. And I even love when sometimes I'm with a customer and it's not the right fit for them. And I'm able to say, this isn't the right fit for you. Here's what we need to do. Let me connect you with someone that I know that's a better fit for you, or another thing. Or even if you wanted to spend money with me right now, don't do it. Go do this first and then come back. Because I love building those type of relationships where I can be a consultant and work with people and do it the right way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think the discipline that I hear in all of that is important, right? Because you will have seen this. You've coached tens of thousands of people all around the world now, if not more. So you must see a common trend of people getting to that 300,000, 500,000, whatever it is that they're making a year. And then they go, okay, well, now I'm a salesperson. Now I've kind of got to this level. What kept you as somebody that was like, well, I'm never going to neglect my prospecting on the front end. I'm not going to just be a closer, but I'm actually going to do the full suite and become the full package, so to speak.
Well, I learned early on. So one of the things that I learned early on was that if you don't prospect, you're dead. So I say this all the time, the pipe is life, right? So the number one reason why people fail is they're not prospecting or they have an empty pipeline. And I had a bad experience. So I sold a really big account and it was huge. And it was so big that in March of that year, so a full calendar year, I could have literally just gone to bed and not sold another thing. And I was going to walk on stage in Hawaii and take the President's Cup because that's how big the account was. And I'd spent a lot of time working on the account. I'm sure you see this. Somebody sells a big account, so they quit doing any sales activity, and then they just focus on all the admin to get the account set up. And I did that. And my sales manager the entire time is like, listen, you're going to pay for this. Get on the phone, go get on the phone, go do some prospecting, go knock on a door. And I would say, no, I can't do that. I got to focus on this. And I got to talk to the supply chain. I got to do this. These things are really important. And I had every excuse in the world because I didn't want to prospect because prospecting sucks. Like, nobody wants to prospect. So I had all these excuses and I had this big account. And then the account got installed, and the moment of truth came. I had to go do a forecast, and I didn't have anything on my forecast. And I remember my sales manager just like, he plowed into me, and he's like, "This isn't okay. Like, it's not acceptable for you to come here and collect a salary and not have anything in your forecast." And I would be like, "Well, I had a big old account, and I sold more than anybody else." And he said, "There's no excuse in that. And if you don't get this fixed, you're not going to be on my team." So look, it was a kick in the rear end. I was mad about it. I was like, I'm the best salesperson ever. And, but I got the clue, and I started working and I started prospecting, and I just made a pact with myself. I was never going to be in that place again. Because what most salespeople are doing is that they're living in what I call the feast or famine amusement park, right? It's up and down, up and down, up and down. And a lot of times they're riding this desperation roller coaster from one good month to one bad month to one good quarter to one bad quarter. And I'm not living that way. I don't like it. It's not okay. And the way to maintain this is just do a little bit of prospecting every day. You don't have to like turn your life upside down. And I know you've seen people when they have an empty pipeline, their entire world turns into prospecting. They wake up in the morning and they're literally making 300 outbound dials a day to try to survive. Well, making 300 outbound dials a day is awful. Like, no one wants to do that. So, but if you spend an hour a day, 1 hour a day, and you're a good salesperson, and you just do prospecting 1 hour a day and then go to the rest of your world, you will never go hungry again. I just figured that out. Yeah. And I'd never let anything get in my way. And also knew that no matter what happened, no matter the economy, no matter what, I could prospect my way out of anything. Because if you can talk with people, you can make sales. It's just that simple.
Yeah, beautiful. And is that where the time blocking and your power hours came from then? Or is it just recognizing I just need to do a small segment every single day?
Yeah, it's the cumulative impact of a lot of little things that make anything happen, right? So in your business, it's the cumulative impact of all the little things that you do. Those could be mistakes, or those could be things that are moving you forward that create success. So the same thing with prospecting. I start with number one. Nobody really likes to do it. Like which human being in the world wakes up every day and says, thank the Lord that I get to go call on strangers and get rejected. Like, nobody does that. That doesn't mean that there aren't people who come in every day and they see it as a game or they see it as an opportunity, but most people aren't waking up and saying that. Most people are waking up and going, I want to be the closer. Right? That's what they say. But listen, I can't trust you to prospect. I certainly can't trust you to close, because those two motions are the same. You have to ask for something. If you're closing, you're asking for something, you're prospecting. So for me, it was like, I don't want to do this. So if I don't want to do it, what do we do like with workouts? Do you work out once a month for like 12 hours in a row and go, okay, I've got it covered? Or you work out 30 minutes a day? You work out 30 minutes a day because 30 minutes a day gets it done. And some would say if you worked out really hard, if you did a high intensity workout for 15 minutes a day, you'd be pretty good. So for me, it was the same thing. If I could do high intensity sprints of prospecting that are concentrated, and that's the only thing I focus on, and I can block that time out and do it 1 hour a day. So for me, it was about 25 to 50 outbound dials. I try to get at least 50 in, but sometimes I talk to more people. But if I could do 25 to 50 outbound dials, most of those dials were about gathering information and qualifying for the future. A handful of those dials were about setting appointments, and I did a little bit every single day. I'm golden. Like, I cannot lose. The statistics won't let me lose. So, but what most salespeople do is they don't do that. They come in the morning, they fart around, they get coffee or get tea or, whatever. They talk to their friends. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. They hadn't made any prospecting calls. And it's like, well, okay, I got sales calls to do this afternoon. I got some customer service stuff to do. By the end of the day, nothing happened. And they do that day in and day out. And that becomes the habit. And it's just no fun to live that way. So for me, it was really simple. High intensity sprints, blocks of time. And that's, by the way, my whole day. When I come in the morning, even in my office now, I have an assistant, and my assistant has a calendar in front of me, and my little blocks of time are on the calendar, and we go through those blocks of time so that we're being as efficient as possible inside those blocks of time to get all the things we have to do in a day. But prospecting is first. We do prospecting first in the morning, and everything else follows.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's almost eat the frog first, and then everything else will be easy. And then
Eat the frog.
within those time blocks, then do you break that down to little short 15-minute segments as well, or even if
I
needed?
do. I love 15-minute segments. So we do this in our fanatical prospecting boot camp. So we're doing live phone blocks. And when we do it in person, so we do these big prospecting blocks. We do it with the military recruiters. We train a lot of military recruiters in the U.S. So when we do that, we do 15 minutes, 15 dial set, one appointment. That's our rhythm. 15 minutes, 15 dial set, one appointment. And most cases, we get a group of people together. What we'll do is we'll say we'll have 100 people in the room, and we'll do a 15-minute block. And usually over a day, we'll do 4 of those. I can't think of a situation where that group of people hasn't had more conversations and set more appointments, and those 4 15-minute blocks than they have in the previous month. We've had groups that have done more in that 45 minutes than in the previous quarter. Why? Because they're concentrating their focus, attention control on one thing, and all we're doing is chopping wood. One dial, one dial, one dial, one dial, and we're calling to set an appointment. Pretty simple. So that's what we do. And I love that. Like, I'll break my time up into that. A lot of times I'll do a full hour. Like, I can do power hours, but I've been doing this for a long time. So once I have my list, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But the 15-minute blocks work on our virtual training. So when we're doing fanatical prospecting boot camps virtually, we do 10-minute blocks. We'll do 10-minute blocks, and I'll have a group that'll come in next week. We'll start doing 5-minute blocks with them. 5 dials, 1 appointment, go. And the exercise isn't so much are we setting appointments. We do. The exercise is teaching the people that, listen, you can do this in 15 minutes. You can be awesome for 15 minutes. And by the way, there are some roles out there. So if you sell a more transactional product or a product with a shorter sales cycle, you're not going to get away with 15 minutes a day. So if you're in a high activity business, you're not going to do that. But there are some salespeople where they have a book of business, or they're selling higher value programs that have longer sales cycles. A lot of those salespeople, if you just got up every day and made 15 outbound dials and you just did it every single day, you would be so full of business, you wouldn't know what to do about it.
Yeah, amazing. One last question on this part, and then I want to ask you about sales EQ. With regards, so you do those 15-minute blocks on your live training. You just get everybody on the phone for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Minutes? Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I can see all on our live trainings, they're all in a room. So, I mean, we just did this a couple of weeks ago. We were in South Carolina with a battalion of military recruiters, about 90 people. They're all in an auditorium. We just stand in front of them, give the order. You have 15 minutes, make 15 dials, set 1 appointment, go. Now, they all brought lists with them because we get with their leadership. But we do this in classrooms everywhere. So when we sit down with groups of people, it's really, really powerful thing to do. And it's amazing what people they start talking to people. They're like, I can't believe this worked. I mean, they tell me sometimes, like, you got to be Yoda to make that happen. I go, no, you picked up the phone and called somebody. The reason that they weren't answering the phone before that is you weren't calling them. That's people don't answer a phone that doesn't ring. But on our virtual trainings, we do the same thing. I got everybody on the gallery view. And so I say go, and we just watch them dial. And then we pull them all back, and everybody reports out. We keep the numbers on our smart board in our training room, and it just works. That's amazing.
That's amazing. I definitely know what I'm adding to my boot camp in 4 weeks' time. Sales EQ. You've also written a book on that. I don't know if I can see it behind you. I can. Yeah, top left. Explain to me your version or your interpretation of sales EQ. What does it mean to you?
Well, sales EQ. Yeah, sales EQ is sales-specific emotional intelligence. So I believe that emotional intelligence is incredibly important. So emotional intelligence is simply your ability to perceive and manage your own emotions while perceiving and influencing the emotions of other people. And there's some broader definitions, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's managing my own emotions, right? My interpersonal skills, and then building on my intrapersonal skills. So I'm able to do both of those things. So our intrapersonal and interpersonal. So that's sales EQ. And I just believe that emotional intelligence is specific to different roles or different places in your life. And sales, because of what sales is, it's essentially one person in a bubble dealing with another person in a bubble, typically in short-term relationships that each person has got to protect their own interest. It's a different type of a game than, say, a teacher and a student, or say, an attorney or a fireman or or a nurse. It's just different than that. So I wrote Sales EQ, which is basically my opus on sales, right? To help people understand that emotions matter. people feel than we think. And if you don't get the feeling right, if you don't get the emotional outcomes right, you're not going to be able to get the data outcomes right. And it's a really simple formula if you think about it. It's value. People always talk about value, how to get people to buy value or pay attention to value. Well, value is an equation of emotional outcomes and measurable business outcomes. So emotional outcomes and business outcomes, you can't have one or the other. You got to have both of those together, because people feel one thing, especially individual stakeholders. So the whole process of sales EQ is just teaching people how to leverage empathy and how to step into your buyer's shoes, and how to understand how human cognitive biases and heuristics impact the way people think, and how salespeople fall into traps where they trigger those biases. For example, like the negativity bias, which is why people are always looking for what's wrong rather than what's right, because we're risk averse. But if you do things that trigger the negativity bias, then all of a sudden you stand out like a sore thumb, because anything that is negative really stands out. So it's walking them through that, and then how to ask better questions. And the heart of the book is essentially the 5 questions that buyers are always asking of you. And that is, do I like you? Do you listen to me? Do you make me feel important? Do you get me in my problems? Or trust and believe you? So it's teaching salespeople how to understand how to answer those questions in the affirmative, because when you answer those questions for a buyer in the affirmative, do I like you? Do you listen to me? Do you make me feel important? Do you understand me? And do I trust you? It becomes almost impossible for them not to want to do business with you.
Yeah, beautiful. And managing emotions, something that most of us struggle with in this desperation roller coaster, you call it. I love that. I think I've seen one of your keynotes on that as well. Any quick tips on managing emotions in this industry, or just in general?
Well, if you think about it, I'm glad that you said that, because if you think about everything, I wrote a book called Inked, which is up here someplace as well. And Inked is a sales negotiation book, and it's a really good next step for sales EQ. But if you think about a negotiation in particular, just in a microcosm, the heart of negotiation is emotional discipline. If you think about it, in negotiation, the human being that has the greatest control of their emotions has the highest probability of getting the outcome that they desire. So it all begins with emotional control. And it's really tough to manage your emotions if you're a salesperson in a negotiation, if you're desperate. Because when you're desperate, the more desperate you are, the more you're willing to give away to get the deal. So I could sit here for an hour and walk you through all the psychology of managing your emotions. And I talk about it in Sales EQ, in Objections, and in Ink, and in different ways that I walk you through all those things. But the easiest, fastest way to gain emotional control, which gives you the ability to influence other people, the easiest, fastest way to do that is to have a full pipeline. Because when you can sell like you don't have to sell, suddenly everything is easy, right? You can relax. And if you can relax, you're going to be more confident because you have a full pipeline. It's like when you've sold a whole bunch of stuff, the very next business that you walk into, you're like, hey, let's go ahead and get this done. And they go, all right. It's like when you're confident, people will just move because you transfer that emotion to them. And this is why relaxed assertive confidence is the most powerful foundation emotionally for sales professionals. And so, yes, I could sit you down and I could walk you through and teach you how to have emotional control when you don't have a full pipeline or anytime. It's hard to do that. But I could also solve the problem for you instantly by saying, go fill up your pipeline. And by the way, keep your pipeline full, and you'll have complete emotional control. And the way I explained it, it's like when we got on the phone, I said, we're so busy right now that when we lose a deal, we got on this call, when we lose a deal, like we're almost happy about it. I mean, we hate to lose, but we're always trying to figure out how we're going to fit those things in. And that's a world of abundance where we have so much in our pipeline that we don't have to really negotiate. I mean, that doesn't mean that we don't, but we don't really have to. We can walk away from deals that we don't want. If people aren't engaging, we can go someplace else. We don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do tomorrow? We're full because my entire team is putting things in the pipeline every single day. And that gives us the peace of mind that we're going to be fine. We're going to be okay. And we can sell the way we want to. And by the way, your pitch is, sell with integrity. Just be honest. Well, think about it. Are desperate people selling with integrity? No. They're not, right? So if you want to sell with integrity, if you want to sell with honesty, if you want to really help your people, if you want to really love being a sales professional, fill your pipeline up. because then every single day you become a consultant. Every day you're walking in and you're solving problems for people. And if you can't solve problems, it's really easy. You can say, you know what, I'll come back to you in a couple of months. I'm going to go over here and help these folks. And your whole world as a profession changes. So if you want to have a high sales EQ, have a full pipeline. That's simple.
Yeah, nice. I like to kind of headline that by saying that you're only as enthusiastic as the length of your pipeline. I always there's nothing worse coming in on a Monday morning not knowing where your deal is going to be for the start of that week. Talk to me about virtual selling. You've that's your, is that your most recent book?
Yeah, just the audiobook just hit today, but yeah, the book came out in June. Yeah, I started writing the book in April, so we wrote it in 60 days. It's the biggest book that I've ever written, and it's been a massive hit. It's blown everybody away at how well the book's done. In virtual selling, we're focused on helping salespeople understand that the future is going to be blending. So depending on where you are, and I know in Australia, you guys have had a lot of lockdowns where you couldn't even go anywhere. I know Melbourne in particular was just, y'all just got completely locked down. So salespeople everywhere have had to adjust the way they sell, but the future is going to be blending, and blending is going to be using all of the communication channels that we have available to us, sort of an omni communication channel approach to, in a blended way, to connect with buyers where they are. So working with them in the space that where they exist. And the blending is really simple. It's a probability formula, so that you're choosing the communication channel that fits the moment, that gives you the highest probability of getting the outcome that you desire at the lowest cost of time, energy, and money. So it could be a face-to-face meeting. In some cases, it could be a video call, could be a phone call, could be direct messaging, or in my case, because I work with people all over the world, I'm on WhatsApp making video calls on WhatsApp or doing phone calls on WhatsApp. So it could be any of those things. So it's teaching people how to do that and understanding that we're going to be doing a lot more on video, and you need to know how to do it very well, because the buyer's emotional experience, we feel than we think. Right? The buyer's emotional experience of working with you is the most consistent predictor of outcome of any other variable. And if you're delivering a terrible experience on video, we were talking about energy earlier, if you're doing a terrible job, then they're not going to like you very much. Plus, it's hard for them to think, hard for them to remember, because the video frame they see is so poor. But it's also understanding that virtual selling is the telephone. Virtual selling is a voicemail. Virtual selling is web chat, which is a big deal these days. Virtual selling is using direct messaging the right way. Virtual selling is video messaging, it's video calls. It's all of those things. And you've got to learn how to blend and use all of those things very, very well. And I'm a little surprised that how many salespeople are just waking up to the fact that they need to change. I'm actually stunned. But I'm also a little happy because it's fueling our business, because we're teaching people how to do this right. But I think it's important for people to understand we are never going back. A lot of people I call them wishbones, right? They're wishing and hoping that things will go back to the way they were. They are not going back to the way they were. That doesn't mean that we're not going to meet face-to-face, because face-to-face is the very best way for us to communicate. It does mean that geographical barriers are going to come down. It does mean that territorial barriers are going to come down. And it does mean that salespeople who adopt a blended approach are going to be more agile. They're going to be faster. They're going to meet buyers where they are. They're going to deliver a better buying experience. They're going to close more, and they're going to be able to have a bigger pipeline because they're going to be more efficient along the way. So that's my core message in virtual selling. And I encourage you to get the book. I think of all the books I've written, I went back and went through the other day ago. I love the body of work that we've built, but I think virtual selling right now is one book that you read it, it'll help you crush it. In fact, I'll guarantee if you read that book, it'll make you more money this year.
Yeah, amazing. What do you say then to the people that are, and I asked this from a selfish perspective, because this was me just 3-4 years ago, that maybe had a fear of public speaking or being on a Zoom or on a camera, and they're hiding inadvertently behind the phone. How can they maximize this experience? How can they get a little bit more comfortable doing it?
Well, first of all, I've been there, so I'm glad that you said that. I mean, it's really, it's vulnerable for you to say that, and I was the same way. I waited way too long to get on video, and I shouldn't have. And what I basically had to do was I had to train myself the same way the military trains people to go into battle. Or have you ever been to a Spartan race? You know, the Spartan race does the same thing. It throws you up against obstacles or outward bound. It's called
Yeah.
obstacle immunity. I had to put myself in that place and do it. And I'm telling you, I'm looking into the camera right now, or if you're listening to this, hear my words, you better figure it out, because video is the way that we're going to be communicating with each other in the future. And by the way, this is not new. Most people don't know that the very first video call was made in 1927 by Herbert Hoover at Bell Labs. So
Yeah.
we need to understand that this has been an evolving technology. And I know that it doesn't feel comfortable. I get that. I know that I spent, years just hiding from the camera, not wanting to get on the camera, procrastinating about it, thinking about it, but not doing anything. And what I did was I finally came to grips with the fact that if I didn't do this, it was going to set me back. It was going to set my business back. So what I did was I forced myself to shoot one video every day, usually on my phone, and post it online. And there's still some on my YouTube channel if you want to see how bad I sucked, because I sucked. So I did that, and I would do it in places where I'd be in airports, and I would be, oh, I'm not going to do this, and I would make myself do it. And I would think everybody's looking at me. They really weren't. They were just worrying about where they were going to go, right? But I would think about it and think about it and think about it. So over time, what I did was I just taught myself how to do that, and then I got better at video calls. And I've invested a lot of money in this. I've spent, over the years, I spent well more than $1 million learning how to do video. In the early years, it was, hundreds of dollars, and I bought a lot of gadgets, none of which, eventually worked for me. But I honed the skills by doing that until now. I spend pretty much all day long on video, and I make mistakes. I screw things up, and I'm over that, because I recognize that most people, they think it's like it makes you human if you're not perfect. So you get on video, but the only way you're going to do this is get on video, go on video. I know it's tough. I recognize that as soon as the camera comes on, sometimes you just lose the ability to speak, and it doesn't make any sense. But the only way to handle it is obstacle immunity. And you got to want it bad enough. Like you got to understand that if you don't get this figured out, you're going to get left behind. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, great advice. And final question, because I want to be respectful of your time, Jeb. On the flip side of that, then, as the consumer now having to consume education virtually via Zoom, pros, cons, benefits. Do we also have to just get used to learning this way because it's the way it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that we're going to go back into physical classrooms, and you're going to learn that way. But I think as a person who is learning, I think you got to make a decision to invest in yourself. So, I go way back and, way back. Okay. So way back, I listened to Zig Ziglar, and I listened to Brian Tracy, and I listened to Tom Hopkins, and I listened to Jim Rohn, and I listened to Wayne Dyer, and I listened to those guys on cassette tapes. Again, don't judge me, I'm old, okay? But I listened to cassette tapes, and I would wear them out. I listened to Tony Robbins so many times that I would break the tapes and have to go buy them again. And that was virtual. I was listening to them in my car. That's a virtual. Yeah. You're listening to a podcast in your car is virtual. I never went to see them. In fact, the only time I saw Tony Robbins once, I saw Tom Hopkins once, and I saw Brian Tracy once. But they didn't train me. I just went to speeches that they gave. So today, right, you can learn a million different ways. Are there going to be virtual or in-person events? Yeah, we've got an outbound conference going to happen this spring, and we're running it, and it's going to be in Atlanta, and it's going to be live. Now, there's also going to be a way for you to watch it virtually, so that's cool too. We were delivering training in a classroom earlier this month. We'll deliver training in a classroom. I guess we delivered one in September. It's not as much as we used to, but we did that.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, just like you was on the sales side, on the learning side, you can learn when you want to. You can learn in the comfort of your home. You can learn in your office. And if you take it, like if you were to take a virtual course from us, in a lot of cases, they're 1 hour a week in a virtual environment where there's self-directed learning in between. So it's not like you got to sit there for 8 hours and learn. You can come on, there's a group of people there, you run breakouts, you collaborate. If you're, our private clients, in some cases we'll do 2 hours or 4 hours or 3 hours. We can change that up. And by the way, if you're a company, you can spend way more money on training and less money on travel when you're doing it this way. And and I believe this at my core, that virtual training done right, done well, can be a very close facsimile to being there in person. Not exactly the same, but close enough. And close enough so that when we train this way and we're training in small chunks, we give time to make the training stick, because people get to actually go try it and then come back. Where when I'm in a classroom, let's say I train for 8 hours, I leave, they got to go try it, but they never have a chance to come back and go, hey, that didn't really work. And, you can get some coaching. So I think that, first of all, if you're in sales, you need to be investing in yourself. You are an elite athlete, and that's what elite athletes do. And secondly, you've never had more ways, more possibilities for learning ever in your entire life. And 3, virtual training done right is less expensive. And in my opinion, it is just as effective as being in person. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of virtual training done wrong, because there's a lot of it that absolutely stinks. It's awful. But people like you and I are figuring it out. We're delivering it the right way. And when we do that, you're going to get a much better experience than you would by, as one of my clients said yesterday, getting in your car and schlepping across New York City to go to a hotel in the rain, to sit there for 4 hours and go to training. We were just able to do this, and we didn't have to do any of those things. So, it's a much better way of learning.
Amazing. Amazing. Jeb, I really, really, truly appreciate your time and just the opportunity to connect in general. How can everybody find you? I know it's a pretty easy answer, but what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, first of all, just you can Google me and find me, but go to salesgravy.com, salesgravy.com, gravy.com. So go there, and of course, all of my books are on Amazon. YouTube channel is /salesgravy, Instagram salesgravy, Twitter salesgravy, Facebook. Type me in. I'm at Sales Gravy, and then my podcast is Sales Gravy, and then you can find me on LinkedIn and follow me there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks so much for your time, mate. We'll speak to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome.